Hi folks, this is all the fruit. And today I'm foraging on the shores of Lake Garda. A huge lake with an amazing Mediterranean climate, but situated in the Italian Alps. Well, actually on this side is the Po Flat and on this side are the Alps. Waking up in my little camp after a wonderful peaceful night. So, what can we forage today? This is an old abandoned olive grove, quite untypical for the Alps, but here around Garda Lake we have the northernmost olive growing area in the world. Yeah, I know some people might say, yeah, in my city there is one olive, or a couple miles away there is a guy who has 50 young olive trees and he is producing. I mean, this is the northernmost massive commercial historic olive growing area, not the recent experiments or single trees. The only disadvantage of the olive, except not being too frost hardy, is that you cannot eat it fresh. However, with some modern varieties they almost taste edible. I wonder why nobody is putting a little bit of effort into breeding an olive you can eat out of hand. It will be so healthy. It will be like a tiny avocado. Single blackberry on this bramble. Now it's my blackberry. Bunch of interesting herbs in this mountain meadow. Toicrium chamedris. Nice smell, good herb. Wild European yam. Dioscorea. Thamus communis in the family Dioscoreaceae. It's horribly toxic like most yams, but there are reports that it has been eaten in times of famine. However, if you don't know how to prepare it, your times of famine are over a little bit too soon and you are 6 feet under. Mana ash, a drought resistant ash species which is supposed to be producing a type of mana, but I've never seen it on that species. Here a wild pistachio or turpentine tree. It's in the same family as poison ivy, covered with pistachio fruits, but in this species they are not edible. What is being used for are the giant galls, which were used for tanning and other chemical purposes. However, I don't see any of the giant galls on this specimen. And here the smoke bush, another relative of the poison ivy. They are also relatives of the mango, and if you rub the leaves you can smell the same smell as in mango skin. It doesn't smell like the fruity smell of the mango, it smells like this tangy smell, which is typical for the mango skin or also for the flesh of Indian mangoes, for example. Centaureum, a popular herb of the ancients. It's in the same family as Gentiana. Seems to be very good for digestion. And here Hypericum, good against winter depression. But now we are in July. If you drink it now, you'll get sunburn. Random mustards growing on the roadside. They all taste mustardy. Here the wild lettuce. It's not just called the wild lettuce, this is actually the wild ancestor of the lettuce. Oh, and here really nice Calaminta. Wow, one of the nicest smelling mints. The smell is orgiastic. The poisonous pokeweed. It's not just poisonous, it's deadly. And yet there are so many edible uses for this thing, if you know how to. If you don't know how to, well, sometimes that's the last mistake you're gonna make. A lot of black locust here. Black locust is basically the easiest way to produce really high quality non-rotting wood in temperate climates, but it's also incredibly invasive, as you can see here. Every part of the plant is poisonous except for the flowers. Flowering season is over. Here are already the little invasive fruits, but from time to time you find a couple out of season flowers, ciao, which are a tasty treat. I mentioned that the Garda Lake has a Mediterranean climate, is in the northernmost olive cultivating area in the world. And olives are so popular in Italy, and the olive oil from the Alps is considered of such superior quality that, yeah, every single square inch of the area is being used for olive cultivation. Olives are a very important climatic indicator. Basically, wherever you can successfully grow olives, you have Mediterranean climate. I know there are olive trees in London. That doesn't mean that London has a Mediterranean climate. I know that people are growing young olive groves somewhere in Germany and in Britain and even in Canada and so on. That doesn't mean you have real Mediterranean climate. It means your climate is similar to the Mediterranean. For real Mediterranean climate, you need sustained, large-scale commercial olive production for centuries. And here, around Garda Lake, they've had this. Interesting is, I haven't seen ancient millenarian olives here yet. A lot of those things here will be well over 100 years old, but for olives, that's still infancy. Oh, look at this one, very interesting. See the top, the producing part. This is Olea Europea, Var Europea. This is the cultivated olive. But down there, the suckers that are coming from the ground, they look very different. Shorter leaves. The branches are sticking out in right angle. See, the twigs are sticking in right angle from the main branch here. Everything is looking completely different, more diffuse and so. Down there, this is the subspecies or variety Oleaster, the wild olive. Well, this is not a true wild olive that grew here on its own, but it's the rootstock for the cultivated olive. And in the Western Mediterranean, where olives are not native, this thing has become naturalized in some areas. It would be interesting to see whether it has become naturalized here along the lake. Because there are hundreds, well, dozens of important and hundreds of less important invasive evergreen species which are spreading here along the Italian lakes and which are replacing the mostly summer green subtropical Central Europeanish Mediterranean mountainish vegetation growing here naturally on the southern slopes of the Alps. Interesting that the turpentine tree doesn't have the giant horn-shaped galls here, but a lot of smaller ones on the leaves. The big galls, they were an important thing for tanning in older times. I don't know if those small ones were used in a similar way. And here, by the way, thousands of pistachio fruits, but as I said, unfortunately, this is not an edible pistachio species. One of many plants which are being only used as an ornamental in Europe, but are a forageable or growable fruit in America. Here the fire thorn. Quite tasty fruits. Well, they taste like a boring apple, but you can forage them throughout autumn, winter, and sometimes well into spring. And yeah, they're easy to collect if you are careful about the thorns. And yeah, tasting like a boring apple is not bad for a fruit you can forage in huge amounts throughout winter. It sounds a little bit, I'm not selling it right, but it's not a bad fruit. Mediterranean cypress, a very important ornamental in Mediterranean cultures. And the myrtle, here a couple out of season flowers, also a very important ornamental in Mediterranean cultures, but of course it also produces little fruits, which I don't see here. They are quite tasty, although quite astringent. I mean, it's a relative of the eucalyptus after all, and it smells like eucalyptus. They're being used more for wine production and stuff like that, but I think somebody should create a couple tasty, edible cultivars of this one. It would be really worth the trouble. Lake Garda is one of the poshest areas in the world. Well, the Alpine lakes of Italy / Switzerland are one of the poshest area in the world. Basically, everybody who has a house here is a multi-millionaire just by having the house here. But if you look around the houses, there are olives everywhere. Those used to be olive groves around the small old towns, and in the 20th and 21st century, actually even starting in the 19th century, a lot of rich people bought houses here. But since, they like fancy gardens, and olives are considered kind of fancy, and also it's very fancy to have your own olive oil. You see that around all those fancy mansions, the dominant tree is still the olive tree. There are also some laws against cutting down olive trees now. Back then there were not. But still a lot of olive trees in these fancy gardens. And here, middle-aged stone pine or domestic pine, a very important nut in the Mediterranean for thousands of years, and also a very important ornamental. Unfortunately, the mature trees, when they get up to 30 meters tall, harvesting the nuts, the cones which contain the seeds, which are called nuts, it's incredibly difficult. One reason they are so expensive, another one is that processing is also difficult. Oops, looks like deer or mouflons or wild boars have been around. Oh, not a friend of car traffic, but when I see something like this, I remove it from the road because it can cause accidents. And here, those rich people with their posh cars, not all of them adhere to the speed regulations. Laurel cherry. YouTube is gonna cancel me for saying that the fruits are edible, so I'm saying Western science says they are not. The people around the Eastern Mediterranean, Black Sea, Caucasus area have been eating them for thousands of years, and they are not gonna stop eating them just because you say they are not edible. Unfortunately, here I cannot see any fruits on this hedge. Bay leaf or laurel, also a very important plant of the, original Mediterranean forests. An important spice worldwide, and especially in Mediterranean cuisine. And also an important ornamental because, it's beautiful and evergreen. It doesn't need a lot of care. It also has quite sizable black fruits. They look a lot like the laurel cherry. Guess why the laurel cherry is also called cherry laurel, and nobody actually can remember if it's a cherry or a laurel. Unfortunately, the laurel fruits are not edible for humans. They are relative of avocado, but too astringent. Strange that the blackberry season here is so late. When I left Germany 2 weeks ago, it was starting there, despite having quite a wet and cold spring. But here, maybe because it's so shady, this looks to be the invasive Armenian bramble. Very strange. Maybe they will be ripe in sunnier spots. Here it was also quite wet and rainy this spring, but nobody's complaining because they had 2 years of drought before that. Actually, I saw the area 2 years ago in the drought. Didn't look very good. I was at Lago di Como, another of the great alpine lakes. So now this year was quite wet and cold, but they are not complaining because they really need the rain. Looks like, did somebody take over a big traditional farm here? Or did they build something that resembles a big traditional farm? They sure have the olive groves to prove it. One traditional old village with a tiny church that just looks like a house with a tower, with a bell tower. Beautiful, beautiful. Still in the original architecture of the region and drowned in this silvery pelt of olive groves. Beautiful. And up here they have more houses which they are trying to build in the original style. Yeah, so they are building modern houses here that are supposed to look like old village homes and farms. I approve of that. It's nice. It's better than building some stuff that completely doesn't fit the environment. Here are a couple important ornamentals. Bougainvillea. Paolone, a big plant collector around here. Well, around Lago Maggiore, told me that here around the lakes they use more frost-hardy Bougainvillea species than in the Mediterranean. And here we have oleander, also a very important ornamental in Mediterranean and subtropical climates because it's very drought resistant. It's a very hardy plant. It's very beautiful. It flowers in summer during the tourist season. The big downside is this thing is deadly. In old times, they used to poison people with it. They used to poison dogs with it. They used to take the leaves and stuff them into mouse and rat holes. And when the mice and rat would open their hole again, using their paws and their teeth, they would die in the process. A very painful death, so don't forage the oleander flowers. You find them in white, purple, red, pink. The natural color is pink, but there are a lot of versions. But stay away from them. American fox grapes. Also, they are much more resistant to cold climate and to American pests and diseases than European ones. So you can grow them in mountains and cold areas, and also you don't need to spray them. And here, a nice lemon. Well, one seems to be a mandarin tree and the other one a lemon tree. Yeah, the area around Lago di Garda is also the northernmost traditional large-scale citrus growing area in the world. And today I'm gonna see one of the medieval citrus greenhouses. I like those arches where the roads basically go under the houses in those old villages. Oh, more of them. Yeah, you heard me right. Medieval greenhouses. They exist. Maybe only here on the west coast of Lake Garda, but they exist. They had greenhouses in the Middle Ages, and we're gonna visit one soon. Ever since the Romans conquered Italy, public fountains have been a very important part of their culture. Aqueductum construire Romanus est. It's the Roman way to build water pipes. Well, only that when the Romans built them, they always look very impressive. Also, the good thing about the Romans was, well, what else did Romans like? Yeah, public baths. And what else did Romans like? Posh mansions with orgies. Actually, the poshest ones, even in Roman times, were in the Alpine lakes. But there was an important thing about Roman aqueducts or water pipes. When they distributed the water in towns and villages, there were like three priorities. The first one was the public fountains. The second one was the public baths, and only the third one was the posh mansions of the super rich. The public fountains, everybody could use them without restrictions and without money. The public baths were highly subsidized, also everybody could use them, even slaves. Getting a water pipe into a private house would cost you an arm and a leg, only rich people could afford it, and the water would go to their houses only when there was plenty of water. If there was less water, first the private houses got cut off, then the public baths and the local drink and the public drinking fountains in the streets were supplied till the last drop. Yeah, and Fortunately, nowadays in Italy, at least in areas where the pipe water is drinkable, we have those water fountains everywhere. Wonderful thing. Right now it's 7 something in the morning and it's already warm. I'm walking around naked, but in a couple hours the scorching sun will make you fall on your knees and thank somebody for those wonderful water fountains. The sun is up and this old man is toiling in his tiny garden. Onions, tomatoes, fennel, potatoes. Oh, he's harvesting some red potatoes. Ciao. Wonderful. I love it when such tiny little veggie gardens are still being cultivated. I've seen too many areas where the old generation dies out. They cultivate them till they are 80, 90 years old, and then the old generation dies out and the gardens disappear. In my hometown of Triavna in Bulgaria, I went 3 years ago after I haven't been here for 8 years in between, and the veggie gardens were almost completely gone. Here another tomatoes, garlic, very young tomatoes in the background, probably for the autumn harvest. Zucchini is an Italian word after all. Cucumbers, lettuces, and what's the stuff in the background behind the zucchini and in front of the garlic? Not sure exactly. And 1 rosemary bush to spice everything up. And again, those little nooks and crannies in those traditional alpine villages. I am loving it. And here they have done quite a good job of preserving the traditional architecture. Here, by the way, a kaki plum, a very popular fruit tree in Italy, and at the background an avocado. Yeah, the avocados are coming to the alpine lakes too. Nice big, 6 to 8 meter tree. And here a couple lemons. As I said, we are here in the northernmost commercial lemon growing area in the world, and it's not a recent thing. It's been here since the Middle Ages. Also, the olives have been around here, most probably since Roman times, because there was a warm period in Roman times, so they definitely grow olives here. Then in the Dark Ages, in the really Dark Ages, you know, when we think about the Dark Ages, we think about probably about late medieval times, the times of the knights and so on, 12th, 13th century. But in the 12th, 13th century, they called the Dark Ages the area around the 8th, 9th century. And even in those Dark Ages of the Dark Ages, the 8th, 9th century, some bishop said, well, something in Latin which people are not absolutely united in how to translate it. It either means it is typical for Lake Garda to grow olives. The other translation means it is required of Lake Garda to grow olives. So either he ordered the cultivation of olives, or said that somebody has ordered it, or he described the cultivation of olives. But no matter what way you put it, there was cultivation of olives here since at least the 9th century, and cultivation of citruses at least since the 14th century. Here you see those lemons are being grown against the south-facing wall. The wall protects them from northerly winds and reflects sunlight on the plants, and of course the lake here works as an air conditioner. That's why you can grow lemons in the Alps. Very traditional way of growing it. Well, maybe the greenhouse is even more traditional. Actually, wait, this was a greenhouse centuries ago. See those holes there? They were for the beams and planks that were used to cover the lemons in winter with a wooden structure. So this was a traditional greenhouse, most probably, and now With climate change, you don't need the traditional form of cultivation anymore, but the lemons are still being grown here because, well, you don't need all the wooden structures anymore, but the wall still provides a lot of protection. That's why the lemons are still being grown against the wall and are being cut so that they grow flat against the wall. Right next to the lemon, the Canary Island date palm. Recent introduction of an ornamental. Actually, down at the shores of Lake Garda, even ate ripe canary dates yesterday, and I hope I will eat more today. Blue passion fruit. This is invasive in Italy. Oh. Come on. The thing is, it's not the fruit that it's blue, it's the flower that it's bluish. The fruit is a bright orange outside and a bright red inside. The exact color of annatto. But unlike annatto, it is sweet. However, did you hear the cracking sound? I cracked a couple seeds. Don't do this, because the seeds of the blue passion fruit are bitter. Here again, different citruses growing against south-facing walls, protected by the house from the north. The only one that still has fruit is the bitter orange. The fruits are not so popular. It's mostly grown as an ornamental because it basically needs no care and is very adaptable to different climates. Actually, you can use almost every part of it for food. It's just a bit more sour than the sweet orange, but so is a lemon. But somehow they rather don't. Somebody has made a nice subtropical paradise here with this bougainvillea and agaves and other stuff. The creeping fig, yeah, the loud Italian motorbikers. The creeping fig, a fig species from East Asia, is a very popular ornamental from the equator all the way to the Italian lakes. The Italian lakes are the northernmost place where I'm aware of it, but I think it would grow in some places in the British Isles and Western Europe. A terraced olive grove, so typical for Italy, until you remember we are here in the Alps mountains, folks. We are not somewhere on the peninsula. We are still in Italy and it looks like Italy, but it's still a miracle. And that's what this type of grove looks like when it's being taken over by some fancy mansion. They still keep parts of the grove, but now it looks a lot more manicured. This here is a commercial olive grove, and this tree here is probably 200 or more years old, still producing. And this here is a commercial olive grove turned into an manicured ornamental garden. You bet they still collect every single olive. Those things are valuable and fancy, and no Italian would waste those olives just because he turned the area into an ornamental garden. Here again, the wild lettuce. By the way, have you heard the term devil's lettuce? It's being used for the harmless Mary Jane. However, they are very close relative of the actual lettuce you buy in the supermarket. Very close relatives, which would put Mary Jane to shame, because they are so much more potent. Oh, here's something else a lot of Western sources say is toxic. This is a variety of the black nightshade, or a species in the black nightshade group. I've only seen this in Southern Europe. The specific version. The fruits are incredibly umami. It's basically like eating soy sauce. And I'm spitting because I also ate an ant. But the umami taste of this nightshade is so potent, it hits you 1,000 times stronger than the umami taste of a tomato. What is this? Ornamental basil. Yeah, it is basil. But basil with beautiful blue flowers. Interesting. Also here a beautiful yellow cluster of Canna edulis, the edible canna. The edible refers to the tubers, but the flowers and fruits are also edible. And of course, who could forget the beautiful, tasty, edible, spicy, delicious daylily. I'm not gonna eat it here in front of the cemetery. I think there are people who planted it here to be beautiful, not to be eaten. Oh yeah. The smell is delicious. I forgot the name of this very common, very popular, very beautiful, very fragrant wine. Please tell me. I think it's called some sort of jasmine, but I'm not sure whether it's a true jasmine. Who cares when it smells like this? A yam. Here in Italy, yams are only ornamental. I wonder why they don't use them as a vegetable. Spain, for example, uses them as a vegetable. And the tiny ornamental dwarf bonsai pomegranate. Borago officinalis, an important Mediterranean herb. Here it starts flowering. Take away wine. That's Italy for you. Or for the British tourists. Don't feel so much like wine now, more like coffee. The Italians produce basically everything they consume inside their own country. They say only the coffee and what was the other one? The nutmeg or the cinnamon or something like this are the two products they import. A pizzeria. Maybe I should put on a t-shirt to go inside. But first look at that. A lemon tree, but only with the cardboard lemon. Well, the kumquats are real, super tasty, but I want the coffee, so I will not steal the kumquats. A chinotto, this is a version of the bitter orange. What is this? Let's see. A grapefruit. This one looks like... this is not a lemon, this is a citron. The parent of the lemon. One parent is the citron, the other one is the bitter orange. What have we got here? Mandarino, I always approve of mandarino. And this, limetta. Well, they call it lime, but the Italian name is limetta. And this, I guess, is another type of grapefruit. But look at those things, they grow in huge clusters. Amazing. And another kumquat, and two olives, and another kumquat, and the lemon this time. There is not only the cardboard lemon, there are also real lemons. What have we got here? Arancio. If there's the arancio, it's probably the sweet orange. Kumquat, something. And what is this? Pursa? This could be Pursa lime. Let's see. Pursa! I got it right. Limpursa. Yeah, I'm proud of myself. It's a not so sour lime, but still rich in vitamin C. It's basically very good for children or sick people if you want to give them vitamin C rich lime juice, but don't want to irritate their throat with the very sour lime. Under a stone pine, I find a stone, but now I need a real stone to crack this stone pine seed.